the idea that you have to have hosts that are kind of close to each other in terms of family and stepping, right? Your Core i7s and your Intel Xeon first generation hosts are not going to be able to vMotion with each other. Your Core i7s and your Core, I don't know, whatever the next one is probably going to be able to because they're fairly close to each other. Now, this creates the problem where I might end up with a set of hosts I bought in 2011 and a set of hosts I bought in 2013. And the 2011 hosts can talk to each other, and the 2013 can talk to each other, but they can't talk among the two groups or between the two groups. I have to be very, very, very careful so that I don't create a cluster where the cluster thinks that I can move things around, but I can't because I can't actually vMotion. That's what EVC does. EVC says, all right, here is the minimum level of hosts that I'm going to support in this cluster, and before I'm even allowed to add a host, well, it's verified against this list. By turning on EVC, I set kind of the minimum bar for admission into the club, into the cluster, and that protects me against that situation where I have a cluster that the cluster is making decisions, assuming that everybody can vMotion, even though not everybody can vMotion. So I'll set this to, I would have you set this to whatever your minimum standard is for your cluster. I'm not going to turn this on because I have virtual machines. But you would probably want to turn this on in your environment to protect yourself against having two hosts that can't vMotion with each other. Here, just store the swap file in the same directory as the virtual machine. It's generally a good idea. You only do this other one in a different data store usually if you're being told to do that. So I'm going to leave that the same and then complete adding this cluster. There we have it. Poof, there's a cluster. Once I create the cluster, the next step is to actually add in the hosts into the cluster. So if I choose add host, I can add hosts right into the cluster here. Now, this assumes that I don't have a host yet, like I'm adding a new host brand new. The hosts that are already part of the data center, I can literally click and drag into the cluster, and that will bring up the add host wizard here. Now, I have a couple of options. When I do so, I can either put all of the host's virtual machine in the cluster's root resource pool, or I can create a new resource pool whenever I do this. I generally just click the first button here because I'm going to create my own resource pools a little bit later. So there's the first one. I'll do it again for the second one. This will kill all the VApps on the host whenever I do so, but as you saw with VApps, there's not that much to deal with. You can recreate a VApp fairly easily. And then I can do it again for number 3 here. Very simple. Now I want you to notice something. Right, I've created a cluster, right? And you notice how the hierarchical view of this cluster is somewhat different than what it looked like before. In the previous version, right, each virtual machine was underneath a host in the hierarchy. And these VMs are still on those hosts, right? If I click here on VM1, that's still on ESX1. But you notice the visual separation here. It's designed to help you come to the realization that once I'm in a cluster, I really don't care anymore where actually my virtual machines are stored. Once I put them in a cluster, I just know that they're part of a cluster, and that's all I have to care about. Now, the DRS functionality of this cluster is at some point going to go about making decisions about where things should go. So here is my DRS tab on the cluster. These are the recommendations. I have fully automated. My power management is turned off, and I'm applying priority 1, 2, and 3 recommendations. So right here is when the next DRS pass comes through, which happens I think it's every 5 minutes. When the next DRS pass comes through, it's going to identify if I've really got good balance across all the hosts in this cluster. And if it doesn't, it's going to generate some recommendations, and it's going to automatically apply them because I've set the automation level to fully automated. If I set this back to partially automated or even manual, the next time that those recommendations come through, you see if I run DRS here, I doubt these recommendations will actually appear because I only have one VM powered on. But the next time these recommendations come through, I'll have the option of selecting a recommendation and choosing to apply. Okay, so